Welcome to another lecture. I hope you've been enjoying the content of the course thus far. In today's lecture, we'll explore three key concepts: freedom, liberty, and autonomy. While often used interchangeably, these terms represent different ideas. For many, freedom is the ultimate good, something we strive for above all else. Patrick Henry's famous quote, "Give me liberty or give me death," encapsulates the passion behind freedom. But is freedom the same as autonomy? Let's dive into the distinction. While we value freedom, it's clear that absolute freedom isn't feasible or beneficial. Laws and social customs restrict our freedom to ensure stability and order. Freedom, in this sense, is the ability to pursue our personal goals and happiness, but always within a framework of reasonable constraints. In his essay on liberty, John Stuart Mill argued that freedom is essential for human progress. Without the ability to live autonomously, we would stifle creativity, originality, and the search for truth. For Mill, freedom is the foundation of a thriving society and essential for the advancement of civilization. John Locke believed that we give up some of our liberty through a social contract to make our lives safer and more predictable. In contrast, Jean Jacques Rousseau warned that without societal bonds, humanity would perish. According to Rousseau, true freedom exists only when we come together as a society for mutual self preservation. Libertarian thinkers like Robert Nozick and Murray Rothbard take an opposing view, arguing for absolute freedom and rejecting most civil and political restrictions. For these theorists, absolute freedom is not only a right, but a natural condition to which we should all aspire. While freedom and autonomy are often used interchangeably, they are distinct concepts. Take the example of a prisoner in a locked cell. Although the prisoner has liberty to leave, their autonomy is compromised if they don't have the capacity for self determination. Autonomy is about making choices and acting according to one's own rational will. Generally, philosophers argue that true moral autonomy goes beyond mere freedom. It's about consciously and freely limiting ourselves to uphold moral principles. Isaiah Berlin reminds us that autonomy isn't the freedom to act irrationally or immorally, but to exercise our rational capacities in pursuit of what is right. In this discussion about autonomy, it's critical to examine Kant's philosophy. Now, Immanuel Kant emphasized that freedom is central to moral philosophy. Unlike animals, whose actions are driven by necessity, humans have the capacity to exercise free will. Kant believed this freedom underpins our ability to make moral choices and fulfill our duties as rational beings. In the world of media ethics, respecting autonomy is critical. Journalists, public relations practitioners, and advertisers must uphold autonomy by making ethical decisions that respect the independence and rationality of both producers and consumers of media. Failure to do so can undermine credibility and moral responsibility. Now, a key case in autonomy and media ethics is direct to consumer drug advertising. Introduced in 1997, these ads are intended to empower consumers with health information. However, critics argue that they often mislead by overstating benefits and downplaying risk, and they may contribute to rising healthcare costs. Despite these cases and the criticisms, autonomy plays a central role in media work. Journalistic independence ensures accurate reporting, while public relations practitioners must balance competing interests while upholding ethical obligations. In all cases, respecting the autonomy of both individuals and the audience is essential for maintaining credibility and ethical standards. But what exactly is the difference between freedom and autonomy? Freedom, according to Berlin, is about self mastery, removing external or internal obstacles to act as one wishes. Autonomy, however, is deeper. It refers to our capacity to govern ourselves in line with rational deliberation and moral values. It's not just about what we can do, but about understanding what we ought to do. Let's look closer at the layers of autonomy. Now, philosophers like Joel Feinberg and Gerald Dworkin provide more nuanced understanding of autonomy. Feinberg identifies it as a multi layered concept ranging from the capacity to govern oneself to the ideal of moral virtue. Dworkin, meanwhile, emphasized the importance of self reflection, being able to adopt and act upon one's preferences only after thoughtful reflection. At the same time, Stanley Benn adds that autonomy requires a coherent belief system shaped by continual self critique. Autonomy isn't just about being free to act, it involves the ability to reflect on and govern one's choices, often in a moral context. Gerald Dworkin highlights that deception can limit autonomy by interfering with another's ability to make informed choices. Similarly, Kreisman suggests that autonomy pertains to how we form and understand our desires, while freedom is about acting without external constraints. But the big question is, do we truly have free will? Some neuroscientists, like Mark Hallett and Sam Harris, argue that free will is more of an illusion than a reality, with our decisions being shaped by subconscious processes. At the same time, David Hume's classic view suggests that our desires, not reason, guide our actions. Moreover, recent neuroethics research supports this, showing that emotional reaction precede conscious thought in moral decision making. In Western culture, autonomy is often seen as the ultimate value, but this focus on rugged individualism may neglect moral responsibilities to others. McIntyre criticizes the overemphasis on individual autonomy, arguing that a moral life requires connections with communities. Dworkin also cautions against elevating autonomy above other virtues like empathy and integrity. Researchers Ann Colby and William Damon highlight that real individualism is not separate from social responsibility. It must be linked to the common good. On the other hand, feminist thinkers argue that autonomy is often framed within a male dominated public sphere, overlooking the importance of the private and domestic realms traditionally associated with women. Habermas stresses that true autonomy involves balancing justice and solidarity, recognizing our dependence on each other in a shared community. Autonomy, in this sense, must encompass both individual rights and social obligations. In professional settings, autonomy is often implied in ethical codes. Journalists must maintain their independence and avoid conflicts of interest, ensuring their actions reflect the public's right to know. Similarly, PR professionals are urged to act with integrity and preserve the free flow of unprejudiced information, respecting ethical standards over personal or organizational gain. Let's look at Berlin's positive and negative freedom. Now, Berlin distinguishes between two types of freedom: negative and positive. Negative freedom is the absence of external interference, as argued by philosophers like Locke and Mill. Positive freedom, on the other hand, involves self realization, the freedom to define and control one's desires and motivations. While Berlin saw positive freedom as a path to true autonomy, he also warned that it could be exploited by authoritarian regimes to enforce a single state imposed definition of good. Fundamentally, Kant's conception of moral autonomy connects freedom with moral duty. Autonomy is not just about making choices for personal gain, but about acting in accordance with moral principles guided by reason. Kant's famous categorical imperative demands that we treat others as ends in themselves, not merely as means to their own ends. True autonomy for Kant means fulfilling moral duties in a way that respects the rational agency of others. A real world case that tests the balance between freedom and autonomy comes from the Journal News in 2012. After the Sandy Hook shooting, the paper published an interactive map showing the names and addresses of legal gun owners in nearby counties. Critics argued that the map invaded privacy, while others felt it was necessary for public awareness. This case highlights the ethical dilemma of balancing individual autonomy against the public's right to know, raising fundamental questions about freedom, responsibility, and the moral limits of autonomy. But what of the tension between autonomy and natural law? Some philosophers argue that autonomy is central to morality, and laws that restrict personal freedom violate this core value. Libertarians such as David A. Richards argue against laws that prohibit drug abuse, prostitution, and even suicide, claiming such laws are paternalistic. On the other side, natural law theorists, including Aristotle, contended that laws should aspire to create a virtuous society by promoting moral actions. The debate remains unresolved, with critics of natural law questioning whether enforcing morality infringes on individual freedom. In the media, autonomy is essential for both journalists and public relations professionals. For journalists, it's about delivering news impartially, free from external influences. For public relations practitioners, autonomy allows them to manage communication campaigns independently, often without interference from higher level interests. But both fields are vulnerable to conflict of interest. Bowen's study showed that public relations executives often lack the autonomy to make ethical decisions, illustrating the importance of maintaining independence in both sectors. Conflicts of interest are a significant threat to credibility and autonomy in both journalism and public relations. They occur when professional responsibilities conflict with personal and external interests, whether they are actual, potential, or perceived. For journalists, this might involve financial ties to the subjects they report on, undermining public trust. In public relations, conflicts can arise when personal loyalties or financial interests conflict with the duty to serve the public. The ethical solution is to disclose any such information to maintain integrity. Certainly, freedom of expression is integral to autonomy, but it's not absolute. Philosophers like Thomas Nagel argue that mental autonomy requires the right to express and defend one's beliefs, even if they are controversial. However, others, such as Thomas Scanlon, remind us that freedom of expression must protect broader societal interests. These include democracy and public discourse. Glenn Tinder and Micklejohn caution that unrestrained freedom of speech could in fact undermine these very interests. Thus, the challenge is to balance individual autonomy with the societal need for order and respect. Unfortunately, corporate consolidation in the media industry has led to a loss of local autonomy in radio programming. Corporations like Clear Channel and Viacom lost control of vast portions of the radio and TV markets. In some cases, local radio stations like those in North Dakota have lost their ability to provide real time local content in emergencies because of corporate practices. This raises the broader question of whether corporate control of media undermines the autonomy of the local journalism and broadcasting available, especially when local content is replaced with satellite fed programming. Indeed, corporate consolidation in media can create significant conflicts of interest where business goals clash with editorial integrity. Companies like Chrysler have attempted to control editorial content in the magazines they advertise in, and this kind of corporate influence undermines the credibility of the media. In the context of public relations, autonomy is more than freedom from interference. It involves having the space to make ethical decisions and act as a key contributor to organizational policy. Bowen highlights the importance of public relations professionals being integrated in decision making processes. Autonomy allows them to uphold professional ethics and ensure the organization is responsive to stakeholder needs and societal expectations. Public relations should not just be about crafting messages or managing public perception. PR should actively influence strategic decisions by representing stakeholder concerns and integrating moral considerations into the process. The role of PR must be elevated to one of decision making, where practitioners can influence the direction of the organization with integrity. Let's contextualize these ideas by exploring NASA's crises. Now, NASA's response to the Challenger disaster was criticized for its poor public relations handling. However, by the time of the Columbia tragedy, NASA had learned valuable lessons. The agency included PR professionals in the crisis management process, helping it to communicate more effectively and transparently. This shift demonstrates the importance of giving PR professionals autonomy and a strategic role in decision making, especially during a crisis. In terms of autonomy and the internet, the vast freedom of the internet presents both opportunities and challenges for PR professionals. While the digital space allows for limitless expression, it also creates ethical dilemmas. Without editors or regulators, PR practitioners must take personal responsibility for the ethical implications of their online communication, ensuring that autonomy does not lead to deception or manipulation. With the rise of blogging, PR professionals must navigate a landscape where controlling stakeholder conversations is no longer possible. Blogs give individuals unprecedented power to influence public opinion. For PR professionals, this means adopting a more transparent, ethical approach, ensuring that the content aligns with the organization's values without crossing ethical boundaries. Now, as traditional pitching gives way to media catching, public relations professionals are now responding to journalists' queries through platforms like Haro and Profnet. This shift emphasizes accurate, honest engagement over spin, helping to foster more transparent, ethical communications between PR professionals and the media. Unfortunately, the rise of buzz marketing and sponsored blogging has led to increased scrutiny. Many bloggers are paid to promote products without disclosing the relationship, which undermines the trust of their audience. PR professionals must navigate these ethical risks carefully, ensuring full transparency and upholding the integrity of their communications. For journalists, the internet has provided them with new tools to engage with audiences and shape conversations. However, it has also created challenges, particularly around maintaining independence. Bloggers and journalists must navigate the balance between personal expression and professional credibility, especially in a medium where rumors can quickly become news. All right, so this is the end of the chapter 8 lecture. I'll catch you all in the next one.